So I recently bought a virtualized Linux system from Lino.com. The sign up and setup was very quick and easy. Within a matter of minutes, I had the system booted and had a SSH root access, which is great. But one of the first things that I noticed about the system was there was a public IP address directly assigned to the Ethernet interface, and I quickly realized that it's not firewalled off at all and was completely open to the internet. So I started reading a little bit about firewalls and Linux and came across IP tables and thought I'd make a quick video on how to use IP tables to enable a very basic stateful firewall um, on your Linux system. So uh, let's see here. The command to look at the uh, IP tables rule set is iptables-l. And you'll see that there's three chains here. There's the input chain, there's the forward chain, and there's the output chain. For a basic firewall, we're going to ignore the forward chain. Basically, you won't use that to control inbound and outbound access. It's more used for routing if you were going to firewall off something that had multiple interfaces. Um, so we're going to focus on the input chain or output chain. You can think of a chain as an access list. So basically the input chain or input access list is an access list that's processed for inbound packets um, to the network interface, and then the output chain is the exact opposite. It's an access list that's processed for packets that are outbound. Um, so I removed the rules that I had on this system for demonstration purposes, and I put them in a notepad file so that it should be quick and easy to show you guys how to do this. So as I put the commands in, I'll just explain them. IP tables, uh, basically pretty much all of the IP tables commands will start with IP tables. The first one is first rule that I'm adding is IP tables -a input, which is basically means append this rule that I'm about to type to the input chain or access list, and it's going to be for the Ethernet 0 interface, and for the source address of this range of IP addresses, which is represented with a subnet mask. You can also put in the CIDR notation of the mask if you wish. So you could do /20 instead of /255.255.240.0. -p is the protocol, TCP. -d port is the destination port, which is 22 or SSH. And -j is the action, which we're going to want to accept a packet when it matches that rule. The next uh, the next access list entry that I'm going to add for the input chain or access list is very similar, except instead of specifying a source and a protocol, we are going to specify that connection states must be established, and then the action is going to be accept. This allows the firewall to do stateful packet inspection and say, allow connections that have been established from other connections that were previously allowed. So it pretty much just makes it into a stateful firewall. And then the next command that we're going to add is, again, going to append to the input chain or access list, and it's basically going to just log the packet once the packet reaches this point in the access list. The policy is the default action that will be taken if a packet comes in and doesn't match any of the rules listed, and by default all of them are set to accept. We actually want to change this to deny on the input. So that is what the last command is here. You do IP tables -P input drop, and if we look at our table again, you can see that our default action is drop. But we're going to go through this rule set. Basically, this allows me to SSH the machine, which is why my connection didn't drop. This allows established connection. So again, If we go and make a web request to google.com, the return traffic from Google servers will be allowed because it will be established connection that was initiated from an allowed source. And then log everything else, which everything else is actually going to get denied. So pretty much log everything that's going to be denied. We're not going to change output just because I don't want to restrict anything going outbound. Pretty much if the Linux machine wants to go out and do it, it should be allowed to do so. And so that's the basic rules that you can use to configure a stateful firewall on your Linux system using IP tables. When you reboot the system, the rules will clear, so make sure you have a startup script with all the commands for your rules. For most Linux systems, the easiest way to do that is to add the rules to your rc.local file, and every time your system boots up, the the commands will be entered in, and your firewall will be enabled and allowing and dropping what you've specified. The packets that are dropped are logged in var log messages, and if we look at that file real quick, I'll just grep out anything with ETA0 so that it's just the networking stuff. You can see not too long ago this IP address tried connecting to my machine on port 1433, which I think is SQL. And anyways, just out of curiosity, if we do a quick who is on this IP address to see where it's registered, it is registered to China. So an IP address from China not too long ago tried probing the server for port 1433, which I think is SQL, and was denied by the IP tables firewall and logged. And that is basically how you create the stateful firewall with IP tables. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I will try to answer them.